Whoa!
Nobody in that room was ready for her. Not the recruiters, not the ex-military candidates who'd spent months preparing, not the 6'4" former MMA fighter cracking his knuckles in the corner, and definitely not Dominic Shao, billionaire, founder of Shao Executive Security Group, a man who hadn't been surprised by anything in 11 years, standing at the back of the room in a charcoal suit, watching through tinted glass like a king, observing a chess board he already controlled. Nobody was ready. But here's the thing about Nikita Jack, she wasn't there to be ready for them. She was there for one reason, one name, one debt that had been building for 6 years. The facility was called the Vault, private, invitation only, the most elite executive protection selection in the country, and only 12 people had been sent an invitation this cycle. Nikita had not been one of them. She'd shown up anyway, with a forged recommendation letter, a fake last name on the sign-in sheet, and MMA gloves that had seen more real fights than every candidate in that room combined. The head recruiter looked at her intake form and actually laughed. Single mother, currently employed as, he squinted, a lunch supervisor at an elementary school. More laughter from the room. Nikita smiled and it didn't reach her eyes. "Are we starting soon?" she asked. "I have to pick my son up by 6. The room lost it. They were still laughing when the first drill began. They stopped laughing 11 minutes later. The vault didn't look like much from the outside. A converted industrial building on the edge of the city, no logo, no signage, no parking lot full of luxury vehicles. Just a reinforced steel door, a single camera mounted above it, and a buzzer that required both a code and a biometric scan to activate. Nikita stood outside it for exactly 4 seconds. Then she pressed the buzzer, gave the code she'd spent 3 weeks obtaining through means she would never explain to anyone, and walked inside like she owned the building, the city, and at least 2 neighboring zip codes. The interior was another world entirely. High ceilings, polished concrete floors, weapons racks along the left wall holding everything from tactical batons to full protective gear. A boxing ring in the center. Obstacle course components folded and stacked at the far end. 6 cameras visible, she clocked 4 more that weren't. And 12 men, ranging from impressive to terrifying, all turning to look at the woman who had just walked in carrying a duffel bag that cost less than their gym socks. The head recruiter, a broad-shouldered man named Sergeant Terrence Polk, retired military, zero humor, zero warmth, jaw like a brick wall, looked up from his clipboard. He looked at Nikita. He looked back at his clipboard. He looked at Nikita again. "Name, Reed," she said. "Nikita Reed." The fake last name sat easily on her tongue. She'd been using it for 4 months. Polk scanned his list, found it, frowned at it, because nothing about the woman in front of him matched what a candidate for the vault was supposed to look like. And Polk had been running these selections for 9 years. Previous protection experience. Security consulting, she said, technically true, dangerously vague. Combative's background. Some. A man to her left, broad, tattooed, with the kind of neck that had its own neck, actually turned around and smirked at the other candidates. Some. That got a whole quiet conversation going without a single word being spoken. Nikita ignored all of it and found a spot along the wall to set her bag down. She crouched, unzipped it, and began lacing her gloves with the calm, methodical focus of someone who had been doing this since before most of these men knew what a combative's drill was. She was aware of everything in the room. That was the first thing people always missed about Nikita Jack. She was always aware. Exits, distances, weight distribution of every person in a 10-foot radius, the recruiter's dominant hand, the overconfident candidate in the corner who telegraphed every shift in his body weight, the camera blind spot near the east wall, the man in the suit behind the tinted observation glass who had gone unusually still the moment she walked in. She'd noticed him immediately. She didn't let herself think about what that meant yet. "All right, listen up." Polk's voice cracked across the room like a whip, and every candidate snapped to attention. Even Nikita straightened, not from obedience but from discipline. There was a difference, and she felt it in her spine. This selection runs 48 hours. You will be evaluated on combatives, tactical decision-making, threat assessment, physical endurance, and psychological stability under pressure. There are 12 of you, 4 spots. You wash out, you're done. No appeals, no second chances, no explanations. Questions. Nobody asked any. Good. Combatives evaluation begins in 4 minutes. Pairs will be drawn at random. The man with the neck, Nikita, had mentally named him Candidate 7, because she was doing that with all of them, rolled his shoulders and cracked every knuckle individually. It took an alarming amount of time. Hope she draws me, he murmured to the man beside him, nodding toward Nikita. Be the shortest evaluation in history. His friend stifled a laugh. Nikita tied off her left glove, flexed her fingers, said nothing. The pairs were announced. Nikita drew Candidate 3, not 7, but close enough. Former collegiate wrestler, 220, arms that had clearly been a personal project for at least a decade. He looked at the pairing and actually smiled. Not meanly, almost apologetically, like he felt bad about what was about to happen. That was sweet. They squared up on the mat. Polk called the start. Candidate 3 moved exactly the way Nikita expected: forward pressure, weight low, hands reaching for a takedown grip. Textbook, powerful, completely readable. She let him close the distance. Let him think he had her. Breathe. Then a pivot. A redirect of his momentum that used every pound of his own weight against him. A precise strike to the joint that locked his arm. And a controlled take to ground that put him face first on the mat with her knee at the base of his spine before his brain had finished processing that anything had gone wrong. 4.8 seconds. She knew because she'd counted. The room went absolutely quiet, not the polite quiet of people being respectful. The stunned quiet of people whose entire understanding of what they'd just seen refused to load correctly. Candidate 3 tapped. Nikita released him, stood up, and stepped back to the edge of the mat with her hands at her sides. Polk stared at her. He looked at his clipboard, then back at her, then at Candidate 3, picking himself up off the floor with the expression of a man reconsidering several life decisions. Next pair, Polk said. His voice was perfectly flat. But Nikita caught the micro-expression, the twitch near his left eye that said his brain was working very hard. Candidate 7 was no longer smiling. Behind the observation glass, in the room nobody was supposed to know about, Dominic Shao had not moved in 40 seconds. He was 34 years old, Korean-American, built like the kind of man who had never once needed to ask for a room's attention because the room simply gave it to him. Dark eyes, sharp jaw, the kind of stillness that powerful men cultivated when they didn't want people to read them. He was being read right now, not by anyone in the training floor, by the woman on the mat who had, for exactly 1/2 second, looked directly at the tinted glass, directly at him, like she'd known he was there the whole time. Dominic turned to his head of operations, a severe woman named Lena Ford standing just to his left. Pull her background file, he said quietly. Already started, Lena replied. A pause. Sir, the name she signed in under doesn't match the recommendation letter. Dominic said nothing for a long moment. I know, he said finally. He looked back through the glass at Nikita Jack, who was now watching the next evaluation pair with calm, attentive eyes, one hand resting on her hip, completely unbothered by the fact that she had just detonated the entire social order of this room in under 5 seconds. Find me her real name, Dominic said. That night Nikita sat in her car in the facility parking lot for 22 minutes before starting the engine. She called one number. It rang 3 times. Mama, a small voice. 6 years old, sleepy. Hey baby, she said softly. All the steel left her voice like it had never been there. You eat. Grandma made the rice. Good, I'll be home by 9. I love you. Love you too, Mama. She hung up. Sat in the dark. And for just one moment, one small, honest moment, her hand trembled on the steering wheel. She pressed it flat against her thigh until it stopped. Then she started the car. She hadn't come this far to fall apart in a parking lot. She'd come to finish something that started 6 years ago. And tomorrow, round 2 begins. But what Nikita didn't know was that Dominic Shao had already found something in her file. Something she thought she'd buried so deep it would never surface again. And it had everything to do with why 12 of his best men were dead. The second morning of selection started at 4:47 a.m., not 5. Not 5:30. 4:47. Because Polk believed that the 17 minutes of psychological disruption between almost 5 and actual 5 revealed more about a candidate's composure than any drill. Nikita was already up when the lights came on. She was sitting cross-legged on her bunk in the candidate's holding room, gloves in her lap, eyes open, expression unreadable, like she'd been waiting for the lights specifically. 3 of the other candidates startled awake. 1 fell off his bunk. Candidate 7 let out a sound that was technically a word but not one that belonged in polite company. Nikita looked over at him. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. He pointed at her. "That's not normal. Neither is falling off your bed." Someone snorted. 7's jaw tightened. But there was something new in his eyes now that hadn't been there yesterday, a recalibration. He was looking at her differently, and he didn't like what the recalibration was telling him. "Good." Polk appeared in the doorway. "Tactical decision-making evaluation in 10 minutes. Grab your gear." The tactical room was set up as a scenario. A mock corporate hallway, offices branching off on each side. A principal, a civilian actor, standing at the far end looking appropriately terrified. And 4 armed threat actors positioned at different points with pain-tround weapons. Candidates were sent through individually. The goal, extract the principal without taking a paint hit. Average clearance time for experienced candidates, 90 seconds to 3 minutes. Average paint hits taken, 2. Candidate 4, former police, confident, fast, made it through in 88 seconds and took 1 hit to the shoulder. Candidate 7, who had been in a visibly foul mood since the bunk incident, made it through in 74 seconds. 0 hits. The room gave him that. Nikita went 5th. She stood at the entrance for exactly 3 seconds longer than every other candidate had. "Candidate Reed," Polk said. "You're live." She stepped in. What happened over the next 61 seconds would be discussed in the debrief for 2 hours. She didn't go forward. She went sideways, immediately pressing against the left wall in the blind spot of the first threat actor, using the environment the way the environment was designed not to be used. She moved with the noise of the scenario itself. A door hinge, an air vent cycling on to cover her footsteps. She redirected the second threat actor's attention using a candidate-issued radio placed as a decoy, then crossed the hall in the resulting 2-second window. The third and fourth threat actors she dealt with in a combined 8 seconds. She extracted the principal in 61 seconds. 0 hits. The debrief was silent for 4 full seconds after Polk read the numbers. "How?" said Candidate 4 finally, with the tone of a man asking a genuine existential question. "I watched the first candidate go through," Nikita said simply. "I counted the reset pattern on the air vents. The third actor shifts his weight to his right before he scans left. He did it every time. I used the radio because nobody accounts for audio misdirection in a visual scenario." She said it with the same energy someone might use to describe a recipe. "Where did you train?" Candidate 4 asked. Nikita smiled, the one that didn't reach her eyes. "Elementary school," she said. 3 floors above the tactical room, in an office that didn't officially exist, Lena Ford set a tablet on the desk in front of Dominic Shao and stepped back. "Her real name is Nikita Jack," Lena said. "Nikita Adiz Jack, age 32, born in Baltimore. She has a 6-year-old son named Marcus." Dominic didn't touch the tablet. "And before the elementary school," he said. Lena's expression shifted just slightly. "Enough." "She was NSB," Lena said. "National Security Protective Division. Black Ops adjacent. Her specialty was close protection and threat neutralization in hostile environments. She operated for 4 years under a handler named Director Ren Calloway, Dominic said. Silence. Lena stared at him. You know him, she said. Calloway is the reason I started this company, Dominic said quietly. He's also the reason I have 6 open graves on my security team's roster. He picked up the tablet now. Looked at Nikita's file photo. A government issue image, 2 years old, her expression exactly as neutral as it was on the training floor. She didn't leave NSB, he said slowly. She was pulled. Why? The file ends, Lena said. Classified past the clearance I can access, but there's a flag on it, sir. What kind of flag? The kind that means someone very powerful doesn't want this woman found. Dominic set the tablet down, looked through the observation glass at the training floor below, where Nikita Jack was now running the obstacle course. Clean, efficient, 0 wasted movement. While every other candidate watched with expressions ranging from awe to genuine personal crisis. She didn't come here for a job, he said. No, Lena agreed. She came here for you. A long pause. Or, Dominic said, she came here for what I have. He thought about the locked drive in his private server, the one containing the names of every person connected to Director Calloway's shadow network, the one Dominic had spent 3 years building, the one that 6 of his men had died protecting. Sir, don't pull her from selection, Dominic said. Lena blinked. Sir, if she's a plant, she's not a plant. He said it with a certainty that confused Lena because his evidence for it was thin. A plant wouldn't have used her real skill set that visibly. She'd have stayed average, stayed invisible. He paused. She wants me to notice her. Another pause. I have. That evening, Nikita found a note slipped under the door of the bathroom she'd been assigned. No name, no signature, just 4 words in clean, precise handwriting. I know who you are. She read it twice, folded it carefully, put it in the inner pocket of her jacket, right next to the photograph of Marcus she kept there, the one where he was laughing so hard his whole face disappeared into the laugh, the one that reminded her every single morning what all of this was actually for. She pressed her hand flat over the pocket for one moment. Then she walked back into the selection. Because if Dominic Shao knew who she was, then he also knew what was coming, and she needed to be the one standing next to him when it arrived. But what neither of them knew yet, what would crack the entire story wide open in the next 48 hours, was that Director Calloway wasn't watching from a distance. He was already inside the building. Dominic Shao did not do things impulsively. He had built Shao Executive Security Group from a single contract at age 23 into the most quietly powerful private protection firm in the country. He had done it methodically, strategically, and with the cold patience of a man who understood that the right move at the wrong time was still the wrong move. So when he walked onto the training floor on the morning of day 3 and stood directly in front of the candidates, not behind glass, not through a monitor, but there, physical and undeniable, everyone understood that something had shifted. The candidates straightened instinctively. Nikita did not. She stood exactly as she'd been standing, gloves on, weight balanced, watching him the way she watched everything thoroughly with the part of her brain that never fully switched off. He was taller than she'd calculated from the observation angle. Broader. He had the kind of face that looked like it had made difficult decisions and made peace with them, not hardened exactly, but settled. Dark eyes that moved across the room the way hers did. They reached her and stopped. Good morning, he said, addressing the group. His voice was even, controlled. I'm told this has been an interesting selection cycle. Several candidates glanced at Nikita. She didn't move. I'm going to run the final evaluation myself, Dominic continued. One scenario, a principal extraction under live threat conditions. The 4 candidates with the highest combined scores advance. The rest of you are done. He paused. The principal in this scenario is me. A ripple moved through the room. That was unusual. CEOs didn't put themselves in the scenario. That was the point. They were the protected, not the variable. Nikita felt something click quietly into place in the back of her mind. He wasn't running this evaluation to find the best candidates. He was running it to get her alone in a controlled environment. Smart, she thought. and felt something she hadn't expected to feel: respect. The scenario was set in the facility's mock corporate floor, a full recreation of a real executive suite, complete with working elevators, a boardroom, a private office, and a server room at the far end. Candidates were sent in pairs. The threat actors, 12 of them this cycle up from the standard 8, were briefed to be aggressive. Nikita was paired with candidate 7, whose name she'd finally learned was Bram Hollies. Former Special Forces, genuinely talented, had spent 2 days being aggressively unpleasant to her, and had spent this morning being aggressively, uncomfortably respectful, which was almost worse. "I take the lead on approach," Bram said as they staged at the entrance. "Sure," Nikita said. He looked at her sideways. "That easy." "You're better at room clearing than I am," she said simply. "I'm better at reading a room before it needs to be cleared. We use what we're good at." Bram stared at her for a moment. "That is the most reasonable thing anyone has said to me in 3 days," he said. "Low bar." "Extremely." They went in. The first 4 minutes were clean, Bram moving through the space with the aggressive efficiency of someone trained for exactly this. Nikita operating in the support position, and doing something Bram slowly realized was extraordinary. She was narrating the threats. Not loudly, not disruptively. In low, precise signals: a tap on his shoulder, a pointed finger, a single word. She was feeding him information about threats he hadn't seen yet. Around corners. Through walls she had no business knowing about. "How are you doing that?" he said, during a 2-second pause behind a partition. "The ventilation hum changes pitch when someone's standing near the duct on the other side," she murmured. "And the second actor in the boardroom was wearing the same shoes as the one we passed in the lobby. Different tread pattern on the right sole. Heard him favor it in the stairwell." Bram turned and looked at her fully. "You're actually terrifying," he said. "Thank you, that was not a compliment." "I know." They reached the private office. Dominic was there, seated at the desk, the picture of a principal in the middle of a threat scenario, hands flat on the desk, expression managed. The moment Nikita stepped through the door, something moved in his face. Something fast and controlled, gone before it fully formed. She'd seen that expression before, on people who recognized her. "Secure the room," she said quietly to Bram. He moved. She stepped toward the desk, and for the first time since she'd walked into the vault 3 days ago, she let her eyes say what her face wouldn't. "I know what you have. I know what Calloway wants. And I'm the only person who can help you keep it." Dominic held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then, so quietly only she could hear it, "Your son's name is Marcus," he said. "He turned 6 in February. And the person who flagged your file is currently in this building." The temperature of the room dropped. "Where?" she said, not a question, a command. "Server room," Dominic said. "He arrived 40 minutes ago under a maintenance clearance I didn't authorize. He has 2 men with him." She was already moving. "Stay with Hollies," she said over her shoulder. "Nikita," she stopped at the door. He'd used her real name. She turned her head just slightly. "If I'm not back in 8 minutes," she said, "lock the server room and call the number on the inside back cover of the blue operations manual in your desk drawer. Tell them Reed sent you." She left. The server room was at the end of a corridor that the facility's official layout listed as a storage wing. Nikita moved through it the way she'd moved through every dangerous space in the last 6 years of her life. Silently, efficiently, and with the particular focus of a woman who had a 6-year-old boy at home and therefore could not afford to lose. She got to the door, pressed her back against the wall, counted the sounds from inside. 3 people. 1 seated, the keyboard clicks were too regular to be anything else. 2 standing, weight shifts, the particular cadence of people running security on an active operation. She thought about Marcus, his laugh, the rice grandma made. "Love you too, Mama," she exhaled. Opened the door. 4 minutes and 17 seconds later she walked back into the private office. Bram was standing against the wall, looking exactly like a man who had spent 4 minutes trying to decide whether to follow her. Dominic was standing now, which meant he'd given up pretending to be a cooperative principal about 40 seconds in. 3 pairs of eyes went to Nikita, then to the server room door at the end of the hall, which was now closed, then back to Nikita. "They're contained," she said. "You'll want to call someone for the tall one. He's going to have a lot of feelings when he wakes up." Bram made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a prayer. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression had changed, permanently, this time. The recalibration she'd watched happen across the faces of every person in this facility over the last 3 days was happening in him now, slower and deeper than any of the others, because Dominic Shao had far more layers to move through. "The selection is over," he said. "I know," she said. "You're hired." A pause. "I know," she said again. Bram looked between them. "I feel like I'm watching something happen that I don't have enough clearance to understand," he said. "You're hired too, Hollies," Dominic said, without looking away from Nikita. "That's great, but—" "Go," Nikita said. Bram went. Alone now, or as alone as 2 people can be with 12 armed actors reset somewhere in a building, and 1 unconscious intelligence operative in a server room, Nikita and Dominic stood on opposite sides of the principal's desk. "You've been looking for Calloway," she said. "For 3 years," he said. "I've been looking for him for 6. The weight of that landed between them. "Your son," Dominic said carefully. Her jaw tightened, just once. "Marcus's father," she said, "was one of Calloway's operatives. He found out what Calloway was building. He tried to get out." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Dominic said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry." It was 2 words, simple ones. But something in the way he said it, without performance, without pivot, hit her somewhere she hadn't let anything hit her in a very long time. She looked away. "Don't apologize," she said. "Help me?" He said yes. What neither of them understood yet, what would cost them both everything before it gave them anything, was that the operative in the server room wasn't one of Calloway's soldiers. He was Calloway's son, and he'd let himself get caught. His name was Emery Calloway, 29 years old, clean-cut in a way that read as engineered rather than natural. The kind of face that could disappear into a crowd of professionals without a second glance, which was, of course, the point. When he woke up zip-tied to a chair in the facility's secure interview room with a headache that was going to need prescription help and Nikita, Jack sitting across from him with her arms crossed and absolutely no apology in her expression, he did something that made both her and Dominic, standing behind the one-way glass again. Old habits. Go very still. He smiled. "You're faster than he said you'd be," Emery said. Nikita didn't blink. "Your father's been tracking me." "My father's been tracking everything." Emery tilted his head, working around the zip tie thoughtfully. "The question isn't whether he knows where you are. The question is whether you understand why he let you get here." Silence. "He let you go," Emery continued. 6 years ago, he could have cleaned everything up. He chose not to." "Your father killed my son's father," Nikita said, voice flat as concrete. "Yes," Emery said, no flinch. "And he's kept you alive ever since. Does that not strike you as unusual?" Nikita said nothing. Behind the glass, Dominic had gone very still. "He needs something from you," Emery said. "He's needed it for 6 years. He couldn't take it by force because he couldn't locate it. But you can." "I don't have anything, the photograph," Emery said. Nikita's hand moved, a micro-movement toward her jacket pocket, the inner one, where she kept Marcus's photo, and she stopped it before it completed, but not before Emery's eyes caught it. His smile widened. "Not the one of your son," he said, softer now. "The one behind it." Nikita had carried that photograph for 6 years without looking at what was behind it. That was a lie, and she knew it. She'd looked once. On the night Dion, Marcus's father, the man she'd built a quiet life alongside before everything collapsed, had pressed it into her hands in the parking structure of a federal building at 2 a.m., while Marcus was still less than a year old, and the world was falling apart at a speed she hadn't been trained to emotionally process. "Don't look at this until you have to," he'd said. "You'll know when." She hadn't known when. She'd carried it and fed Marcus breakfast and done school pickup and laced her gloves and trained in her apartment at 5 a.m. when the baby was still sleeping, and she'd waited to know. 6 years. She left Emery in the interview room and walked to the east corridor. Dominic found her there 90 seconds later. She already had the photograph out. Marcus grinning so hard his eyes disappeared, his whole face a laugh. She turned it over. The second photograph had been folded into a square, so small it had compressed into almost nothing over 6 years of living in her jacket pocket. She unfolded it carefully, slowly, the way you open something you know will change things. It was a document photograph, not a candid. A surveillance image, the kind taken from distance with a long lens. A boardroom. 7 people seated around a table. And in the center, director Ren Calloway. Beside him, a face she recognized from news cycles and financial pages. Beside that person, another. And another. And in the bottom right corner of the image, barely visible, the kind of detail you'd miss if you weren't trained to find it, a date stamp. A location code. And a document on the table in front of Calloway, turned just enough toward the camera to read the header. Operation Veil. Authorization code. SHA ominous one. She went completely still. Dominic, standing beside her, had gone the color of someone whose entire understanding of a 6-year timeline had just rewritten itself in 4 seconds. "That's my company's authorization code," he said, very quietly. "But I never—" "Someone used your code," Nikita said, "to authorize the operation that killed Dion, and to legitimize everything Calloway built underneath it." Dominic turned to look at her. "Someone in my organization," he said. "Someone close enough to have your code," Nikita said. 6 years ago. They looked at each other. 6 years ago, Dominic's company had been new, small. The inner circle of people with that level of access had been Lena, Nikita said. Dominic's jaw tightened. "She's been here since the beginning," he said. "Yes," Nikita said. A long silence. "She sent me your invitation," he said slowly. "The day I decided to run this selection, she drafted the candidate list. She put your name on it." Nikita felt the pieces slide into place with the cold, sickening precision of a mechanism that had been running a long time without her understanding it. "She didn't know I'd come under a fake name," Nikita said. "She'd have put my name on the list expecting the system to flag me and reject me at intake. She didn't expect me to already have a forged identity in place. She's been feeding Calloway information about this company for years," Dominic said. "And now she knows you're onto her," Nikita said. "Because Emery let himself get caught. That was the signal. He wasn't here for the server, he was here to confirm that I'd made contact with you." She looked at him. "She's going to move tonight," Nikita said. "Whatever she's been building toward, it ends tonight." They found Lena Ford in Dominic's private office. She was standing at the window when they came in. Didn't turn around. "I wondered how long it would take," she said. "Lena," Dominic's voice was controlled. "Barely." "I want you to know," Lena said, turning now, "that I genuinely like you, Dominic. That part was never theater." "Then why?" "Because Calloway has my daughter," Lena said. Everything stopped. "He's had her for 4 years," Lena continued. Her voice was level, but it was level the way a bridge is level before the support gives. "She was studying abroad. He took her as collateral, that's the word he used. Collateral in case I ever thought about going to you." Silence. Nikita looked at Dominic. Dominic looked at Lena. "You should have come to me," he said. "He said if I did." "I know what he said," Dominic cut in, and there was something in his voice now, not anger, not betrayal, something older and deeper than both. "He says that to everyone. It's the only play he has." Lena's composure cracked just at the edges, just barely visible. Nikita stepped forward. "Where is she?" Nikita said. "Your daughter, where does he have her?" Lena looked at her. "Where?" Nikita said again. Her name was Sierra Ford. 22 years old. And by the time Nikita walked out of that office with an address and Dominic Shao 3 steps behind her, she had made a decision that had nothing to do with the job, the selection, or the photograph. Some things you do because you were trained to. Some things you do because 6 years ago, someone did the same thing for Marcus, tried to anyway, and didn't make it home. You pay those debts forward, always. But Calloway had been waiting for this moment for 6 years. And he had one more card that nobody, not Nikita, not Dominic, not Lena, had seen coming. The address led them to a private medical complex 40 minutes outside the city. Clean, clinical, the kind of facility that looked legitimate from every angle except one. It had no public registration, no listed staff, and its entire power grid ran on a private generator that didn't connect to the city's infrastructure. He runs it as a rehabilitation center on paper, Lena said from the backseat, voice stripped of everything except the need to get there. It's been there 3 years. I've never been allowed to see her in person, only calls. Supervised calls. How many people inside? Nikita asked. 12 to 16 depending on the rotation, armed, well-trained. Calloway, he'll be there, Lena said. He knew the moment Emery was contained that I'd break. He'll be there waiting. In the front passenger seat, Dominic was on a call, quiet, efficient. The conversation she could infer from his half of it involving words like immediate and roof access, and a grid coordinate she clocked without meaning to. He had resources she hadn't fully mapped yet. She was mapping them now. You have a team incoming, she said when he hung up. 8 minutes out, he said. We don't wait, she said. He looked at her. Calloway will move her the moment he sees external vehicles on the approach road, Nikita said. The window is the 90 seconds between when we arrive and when his perimeter team can organize a relocation. We go in on foot from the tree line. We reach the interior before they can reset. That's 2 of us against 12, Dominic said. 11, Nikita said. The rotation schedule Lena gave us has 1 guard on meal break at this hour. A pause. 11, Dominic said. I've had worse odds, Nikita said. When? I'll tell you later. Something moved across his face so fast she almost missed it. Something warm. Something that had no business being there in the 40 seconds before they went into a hostile facility together. She felt it anyway. Later, he agreed. They went in from the east side, through the tree line, using the shadow of the generator building to move along the perimeter. She let him take the first approach point. His instincts were good. She'd established that, and moved in parallel 3 steps behind and to his left, watching the angles he wasn't watching. They communicated in the wordless shorthand of people who had, over the course of 72 hours, and an extraordinary number of high-pressure variables, developed the kind of operational rhythm that usually took teams months to build. That should have felt strange. She noticed that it didn't. The first contact was a guard at the east door. Dominic moved. She covered him. The guard went down quietly. You've done this before, she murmured as they moved inside. I wasn't always behind glass, he said. She filed that away. Sierra Ford was on the 3rd floor. They reached the 2nd floor landing and Nikita held a fist up stop. Dominic stopped. She listened. 2 on the stairs above us. 1 is favoring his left. He'll be slower on the turn. The other one pauses at the landing before he moves. I've heard it twice. You've been counting since we came in, Dominic said, not as an accusation. More like awe he was trying to keep out of his voice and not fully succeeding. I always count, she said. Does it ever get quiet, inside your head? The question surprised her. Not because it was inappropriate, because it was the right question. The question that knew where to find something she didn't usually show. No, she said honestly, but some things are louder than the counting. She didn't look at him when she said it. She didn't need to. They got to Sierra in 4 minutes. She was in a room that looked almost comfortable, almost, in the way that a cage can look comfortable if you put enough furniture in it. 22 years old, her mother's sharp eyes, her father's quieter mouth. She startled when the door opened, then saw Nikita, a stranger, and Dominic, also a stranger, and did something that Nikita hadn't expected. Mom sent you, she said immediately, not a question. Yes, Nikita said, we need to move. Sierra stood up. No panic, no hesitation. She's Lena's daughter, Nikita thought. They were on the ground floor, 60 seconds from the east exit, when Director Ren Calloway stepped into the corridor in front of them. He was older than his file photo. Thinner. The kind of thin that came from years of operating on stress and certainty rather than rest. Silver hair. cold gray eyes, and the particular posture of a man who had spent his entire career being the most dangerous person in the room and fully expected that to still be true. He looked at Nikita. "Hello, Nikita," he said. "Director," she said, "you found the photograph." 6 years late, she said. "Yes." He tilted his head. "Dion should have trusted you with it sooner. He was always too protective. It was his flaw." She felt the words land on something deep and old and still tender. "Don't," she said quietly. "He was good," Calloway said, and something in his voice shifted just slightly. Something that wasn't quite guilt but was adjacent to it. "He was genuinely good. I want you to know I understand what was lost." "Then you understand why I'm here." "I do," he said, "and I'm not going to stop you." Silence. Dominic to her left went still. "The photograph implicates you," Nikita said. "It proves what you built. Why wouldn't you?" "Because it also implicates the 7 people around that table," Calloway said. 7 people who are considerably more powerful than I am and who have been waiting for me to become a liability for 3 years. "I am," he said, "out of moves, Miss Jack. I have been for some time." He reached into his jacket. She tensed. He produced a drive, small, matte black. "Everything," he said, "every name, every transaction, every operation they authorized using your company's code. This to Dominic and everything they built underneath it. It's all there." He held it out. Nikita looked at him for a long moment. "Why?" "Because Dion asked me to," Calloway said, "before the end. He asked me to make sure you and the boy were protected when it was over." She felt something move in her chest, hard and sudden and too complicated to name. "He trusted you," she said. "Not entirely," Calloway said, "but he knew I kept my debts." A long pause. She took the drive. His team arrived 90 seconds later. Calloway was in custody. Sierra was with her mother. The drive was in Dominic's hands. And Nikita was sitting on the front steps of a facility that was about to be swept by people with considerably more official standing than she currently possessed, holding the inner pocket of her jacket closed over a photograph of a 6-year-old laughing, so hard his whole face was the laugh. Dominic sat down beside her, not close enough to intrude, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cold night air. They sat there in silence for a moment. "You should have told me why you came," he said. "Would you have let me in?" "No, that's why I didn't tell you." A pause. "I want to meet him," Dominic said. She looked at him sideways. "Marcus," he said, "when you're ready, if you're ever ready, He stopped, started again. "He's the reason you're here. He should be acknowledged, in some way." Nikita looked at him for a long moment. In the 2 years she'd known Dion, in the 6 years she'd been doing this alone. In the 72 hours of the vault, the drills, the photograph, the server room, Calloway's corridor, nobody had ever said that. He should be acknowledged. She looked away before he could see what that did to her. "His bedtime is 8:30, she said. "He doesn't negotiate on it." "I respect that in a person," Dominic said. Despite everything, the night, the exhaustion, the 6 years of wait she was only just starting to set down, Nikita laughed. Really laughed. Soft and real and surprised by itself. Dominic looked at her, and something in his face settled into something she recognized from the photograph of him in the operational files she'd spent 3 weeks studying. Only in those photographs, it had been missing. 6 months later, Nikita Jack became the first woman to hold the title of Chief of Protection at Shao Executive Security Group. The press coverage was considerable. The internal memo Dominic sent the morning the announcement went public was 4 sentences long and said everything worth saying. She earned this. She earned it before she walked through the door. Be grateful she stayed. The 7 names on the drive were handed to federal oversight through channels that took 8 weeks to properly process and approximately 48 hours to leak to every major outlet simultaneously. Director Ren Calloway cooperated fully. Lena Ford resigned. She and Sierra moved to the coast. Nikita got a postcard in November with a photograph of the ocean and 2 words, "Thank you." She pinned it to the wall above her desk. Marcus started 1st grade and told his entire class his mom was basically a superhero, but she says I can't tell people that. Dominic, For the record, negotiated bedtime to 8:45 on Fridays. Marcus felt this was reasonable. Nikita felt something she had not let herself feel in 6 years: safe. And that, loves, is where we leave them. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. That means everything. If this story moved you, made you laugh, made you hold your breath, share it and let someone else feel it too. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Until then, always, always keep going.